I spent years feeling responsible for people's growth, healing, understanding, and their emotions. I believed that if I could just explain myself clearly enough, love them deeply enough, or remain patient long enough, things would eventually change. What I eventually learned is that people change when they decide to change. Yeah, that's what it is.
It's so heavy. I had to close the patio doors because the water started coming in. Look at all the water on the ground and stuff out there. Like, it's cutting up outside. This storm ain't nothing to play with, honey. Morning, darling. Good morning. So, baby, last night a time was had. I had the time of my life going up on a Tuesday. But it's the morning after, and yesterday when I finished washing my hair, I realized my red isn't as red as it once was. So I need to color my hair today. And while I'm coloring my hair, baby, I got a story time about how people got me fucked up. Y'all, I was talking to my mama, and my mama was like, you know, you the cut off queen. Listen, one wrong move, and I don't care who you are. You gotta go. You gotta go. No games. I ain't hold shit back. Okay? Life is too short. Life is too short. So I really want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like oftentimes we're raised and taught to just hold on to people and things like, oh, well, that's your uncle, that's your grandmother. And baby, I don't give a fuck. I'm not talking to my grandma no more. That woman refused to apologize. I made my peace. I made my peace. I only got one life to live as far as I know. You know, I may reincarnate back in this bitch, but who's to say I'm gonna come back as a person? I may come back as a damn bird or a chimpanzee, you know? An ant. Shit, you never know. None of us really know. We have visions, we have information, we have this intuition of things, but at the end of the day, we don't know shit. So, I'm about to color my hair. It looked like an orangey color. It's already washed, so all I gotta do is put the color in it. And yeah, so color me through that process, y'all. Change the color of my hair. My hair.
I come from a family that doesn't believe in apologizing. At least not in the way that most people think of apologies. You know, no one sits you down and acknowledge how they hurt you. No one took accountability for their role in the situation. Instead, the expectation was that enough time would pass and everyone would simply move on. Someone would invite you over for dinner, call and ask how you're doing, or start a conversation about something completely unrelated to what happened. And the unspoken agreement was that whatever happened between us will remain unspoken. And not only that, but between us. We would all pretend it never happened and continue on as if the relationship had been repaired simply because enough time had passed. And don't forget, what happens here stays here. For a lot of my life, I thought that was normal in my friendships and romantic relationships too. When you're raised in an environment where conflict is avoided instead of resolved, you don't realize there are healthier ways of handling relationships. You assume that everyone suppresses their feelings. You assume that everyone walks around carrying years of resentment, disappointment, hurt, and misunderstandings that were never addressed. You assume that pretending everything is okay is what mature people do because that's what you've always seen. It wasn't until I got older where I started going to therapy and began doing the work to understand myself that I realized how much of my understanding of relationships have been shaped by unhealthy dynamics. One of the things I discovered about myself was that I had become the person constantly trying to make things right. I was the one initiating difficult conversations, taking responsibility. I was the one trying to understand everyone's perspective. I was the one attempting to create peace, even when I wasn't the person who had disrupted it in the first place. But there are also people that I've never received an apology from, and if I'm being honest, I know I probably never will. Years ago, that would have devastated me. I would have spent months replaying conversations in my head, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. I would have imagined future conversations where everything was finally addressed and resolved. I would have held on to the hope that eventually they will understand my perspective and realize how their actions affected me. But now, I understand something different because I have peace in not knowing, and I have closure because sometimes closure is accepting that the apology isn't coming. It's in accepting that the conversation you're waiting for is never going to happen. And sometimes that closure is recognizing that the person you're hoping to change has no interest in changing. That doesn't make them evil. It doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. It simply means they are in their own journey, and that journey may never lead them to the level of self-awareness that you're hoping for. But that also doesn't mean that you have to keep them in your life. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that many of the things holding us back aren't situations, they're attachments. They're the people we keep trying to save, they're the relationships we keep trying to revive, they're the expectations we refuse to release, they're the stories we've convinced ourselves still need another chapter. Meanwhile, life is trying to move us forward, but we remain emotionally tied to something that ended years ago. And as I'm sitting here coloring my hair red, I can't help but think about the women in my family because red has always been a significant color among us. Red lipstick, red hair, red nails, even a red nightgown. It was always associated with confidence, power, and strength. Even now, red remains one of my favorite colors to wear. You'll always see me with a red lippy. Yeah, red has always felt like my power color. And when I think about it, that connection probably comes from the women who raised me. The women in my family were incredibly strong, a little toxic, but they were strong. And I understand that toxicness came through them surviving things that I probably don't even know about. Things that my mind couldn't even be able to fathom. And the things in them that made them so strong and demanding at times. It helped them carry families through difficult times. They figured out how to make things work when resources were limited. And they sacrificed a lot. And what I've learned from observing them is that through that sacrifice, it also can cause resentment. And that resentment can show up in your relationships. And I realized that's what happened with us in our family. They had a resentment because of choices that they made, if we're being honest, but it hardened them because life made it hard for them. And it doesn't mean that they don't love you. Sometimes they don't know how to love. Someone can love deeply and still lack the tools necessary to maintain healthy relationships. As I've gotten older, I've stopped viewing people as all good or all bad. I've stopped seeing my family through such a black and white lens because the truth is more complicated than that. The same people who taught me resilience also taught me avoidance. The same people who taught me strength also modeled emotional suppression. The same people who loved me also hurt me. And that's true for many families. Most people are passing down what was simply given to them. They're not consciously deciding to create dysfunction. They're operating from the tools that they inherited, just as the generation before them did. The challenge becomes deciding what you want to carry forward and what you want to leave behind. For me, one of the things I chose to leave behind was the belief that I was responsible for fixing everyone. I spent years feeling responsible for people's growth, healing, understanding, and their emotions. And I believed that if I could just explain myself clearly enough, love them deeply enough, or remain patient long enough, things would eventually change. What I eventually learned is that people change when they decide to change. Accepting that was painful because it meant letting go of the fantasy that I could somehow save relationships through effort, but I needed to let it go. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to create the life I have now. People often ask me how I was able to leave everything behind and move to different countries by myself. They ask how I was able to walk away from the familiar and build a completely different life. And the truth is that I don't think I could have done it if I hadn't first learned how to detach. And I'm not talking about in a cold way. I'm talking about in a way that makes me able to see love from a more expansive way. You know, I still care, but I had to learn how to detach in a way that allows me to accept reality when something is no longer serving me and my highest good. And as I look back, I can see how unhealthy it was to stay attached to people, places, and things that was not for my good. I no longer chase, I'm no longer waiting. I'm now creating room for peace, growth, and people who are in alignment with me and who I am and what I have to offer. Because you have to stop believing that closure only comes through reconciliation. Because sometimes closure comes through acceptance, and healing can sometimes come through distance. I'm going to thank you all for tuning into my channel. Thank you for all the subscribers. Thank you to all of the channel members for making this possible here. I would love for you to consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button down below. And with that being said, y'all, I'm going to see you in the next video.